we will talk about the just transition from coal in Slovenia. First, a little bit of background. Our company was involved with strategic impact assessment procedure for the Slovenia's national strategy for transition from coal. And as such, we mostly dealt with the health and well-being of the people in the two regions in Slovenia that European Union recognized as those that would need to go through this procedure. So firstly, I just want to clarify what we mean when we say just transition. The International Labour Organization defines just transition as greening the economy in a way that is fair and inclusive as possible to everyone concerned, creating decent work opportunities and leaving no one behind. This involves maximizing the social and economic opportunities of climate action while minimizing and carefully managing any challenges, including through effective social dialogue among all groups impacted and respect for fundamental labor principles and rights. I want you all to sort of like have this framework of what just transition actually means, so that what we will talk about later on will make hopefully a little bit more sense. So firstly, I want to address the legislative background for this process of just transition. So basically, based on the Paris Agreement, European Union launched the European Green Deal, which, as you all know, is a set of policy initiatives, a strategy basically to transform European Union into a sustainable, fair, and prosperous society with a modern, circular, and competitive economy and zero net emissions of greenhouse gases in 2050. In accordance with that, European climate law was adopted in June 21, which includes a binding objective of climate neutrality in the EU by 2050, but also with an intermediary target of net domestic reduction in greenhouse gases emissions of at least 55% compared to 1990 levels by 2030. So the legislative package for achieving this goal is also known as Fit for 55, was also proposed in summer of last year. So this Fit for 55 package basically includes numerous areas where the European Union could implement the highest reductions. So these are mainly transportation, traffic, energy efficiency, renewable energy, etc. So the issue with these grand ideas obviously comes to the fact that strong political will be needed, as well as sizable financial investments to achieve these goals. So a plan on how to achieve this is through Sustainable Europe Investment Plan, and a part of that is the Just Transition Mechanism, which is talked often when we talk about the transition from coal in European Union, as this is the main financial mechanism with a plan to mobilize minimum of 100 billion euro to invest into basically coal phase out. European Union recognized 100 regions in European Union that would go through the process of just transition from coal, and 2 of them are also in Slovenia. So a little bit more on the financial resources for this, for the just transition. It's basically, I mean, as we all know, European Union finances are quite a complicated world, but basically to simplify it as much as possible, the Just Transition Mechanism is comprised of 3 pillars. Firstly, you have the Just Transition Fund, which is intended for primary grants. And in order to access this fund, countries have to, or member states have to provide territorial plans, which are basically a collection of projects that can be crucial for the implementation of these transitions. And this can include spatial reconstructions, investment in education and training, etc. The crucial part of this is that for every €1 from this Just Transition Fund, a member state can add in between 1.5 to 3 euros to this particular project or investment, either from sources like European Regional Development Fund or European Social Fund Plus, or through national co-financing. Then the second pillar is Invest EU, which is dedicated transition scheme, which is intended to trigger private and public investment to support these policy objectives. And the basis for that is a EU guarantee of 38 billion euro. And then third is a public sector loan facility, which is intended for any projects that are benefiting this coal phase out in these 100 territories. Apart from this, basically any sort of projects that can be financed through other financial mechanisms can be used as long as they are contributing to the transition from coal in that particular area. And then on Slovenian part, the legislative background for that is basically Slovenian development strategy that was adopted in 2017. And there Slovenia puts high quality of life for all in the center for all of its future development. And then with this in mind, Slovenia then prepared National Energy and Climate Plan, which tackles 5 main dimensions of the energy union, which are decarbonization, energy efficiency, energy security, internal energy market, and research innovations and competitiveness. And then based on that, finally, we come to the national strategy for transition from coal of Slovenian coal regions that we are going to refer to as the national strategy. This was approved by Slovenian government in January of this year. And it's a very hefty document that includes a range of all sorts of measures that encompass all elements of the coal phase out. So the 4 main elements are energy, environment, economy, and human resources with social infrastructure. So when it comes to energy, it talks mostly about district heating, which is very important in this process. When it comes to environment, it talks a lot about rehabilitation and reorganization of degraded areas that were previously used for coal mining or energy production. When it comes to economy, which is quite important in this part, it talks about a resilient regional economy based on sustainable development and circular economy. And then what we worked on the most in our company are the human resources and social infrastructure, with the idea that not only are people happy where they are working there and living there, but they also start returning to the regions or even immigrate from elsewhere due to the high level of services and opportunities. And most importantly, the strategy also addresses social security due to coal phase out for people working in coal and energy sectors. So parallel to the preparation of the national strategy, for 2 regions in Slovenia that are part of this just transition from coal plan, the action plans were prepared, and these are more concrete actions and activities that could address the just transition from coal. And then more on these 2 regions and what exactly we found out through the strategic impact assessment. I will pass the word on to my colleague Nataša to tell you more about that.
Thank you very much. I would also like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to present at your conference. I'm going to talk about the two coal regions in Slovenia. They're called Zasavje and Saša region. These are two of, as Katarina mentioned, two of the 100 regions that European Union recognized as coal regions and are justified to receive funds for the transition itself. The first region is Zasavje, just to see where it's located. The Zasavje region has a 250 years of mining history. The closing of the first mine started already in the 90s, and the whole process finished already somewhere between 2014 and 2015, when also the Trbovlje thermal power plant was closed. It is an important lesson for Slovenia to learn from, because the coal phase-out transition in Zasavje focused solely on the physical aspects of the closure and the social status of redundant workers, to the extent that they would receive a pension. However, that was it. The whole region has not been transferred, and this had led to quite a lot of negative consequences. Today, the Zasavje region has a GDP and employment rates below Slovenian average. It is one of the poorest regions in Slovenia, and since 2013, some 5,000 jobs have been lost in mining and mining-related activities. When we talk about the number of 5,000, we very often actually talk about 5,000 families that have been affected by this process and were not considered in this transition phase. Today, Zasavje faces lack of employment opportunities, and the people still living there migrate to neighboring cities to find jobs. Most of all, it lacks prosperity for young people to stay in the region. Now, compared to Zasavje, we have the second region, Saša region, which is still active coal region, consists of 10 municipalities, and 3 of those municipalities actually present a core region. Velenje still has an active mine, and Šoštanj has a thermal power plant that produces heat and electricity. Saša region also has a long history of mining. Energy sector currently employs around 2,300 people directly and additional almost 2,000 indirectly. Coal-related industries generate approximately 30% of region's income, which is significant. Now, the coal phase-out predicts the closing of Velenje mine, the closing of TEŠ 6 block of thermal power plant by 2033, which is the date that Slovenia defined as a coal phase-out year. Now, below, I listed some socioeconomic transformation measures of the region that are planned within the national strategy. So they are dealing with substitution of heat production in the region, maximizing renewable energies potential, renovation of buildings, of course, management of degraded areas. However, they are including investments in research and development. They want to establish, and they're already working on it, the entrepreneurial networking, specifically focusing on small and medium enterprises. Of course, they want to invest in road infrastructure, but also support sustainable transport. Sustainable tourism should be supported, wood processing chain, digitalization, education, etc. Last but not least, social safety for workers, not only in the form of financial payments, but also offering them retrainings, generating new jobs, etc. This last part is extremely important because what we've learned from Zasavje was that even if people who worked all their lives in mines received financial payment or substitution for their work, many of them lost the purpose. They were not useful in the society anymore, and very commonly depression was the outcome, which severely affected their health. So these are all the things that are not visible in the first glance, but have a great impact on the society, on their families. So what did we do? Within the framework of strategic impact assessment of the national strategy, our company was investigating environmental and socioeconomic impacts of the strategy. We took a closer look at the social and material welfare and health, a closer look at the energy poverty in these two Slovenian co-regions. What we found out that if the strategy is going to be implemented as it is planned, it will actually have a positive impact on both regions, or at least not have a negative impact. That will be achieved through creation of new jobs, investments in infrastructure, etc. The mitigation measures that we have proposed were mainly related to vulnerable groups. So the ones that are already poor might be severely affected by the measures, and the energy poverty was addressed, and all mitigation measures were then included in the strategy. Now, in the discussion, I just would like to comment that the coal phase out in Slovenia is an ambitious goal. Ambitious in a sense that in a rather short amount of time, the social and economic transition needs to take place. Especially social one is the one that usually requires more time. But it is necessary because climate change is forcing us to take action. I would also like to point out what previous speakers already pointed out, and that is collaboration with all relevant stakeholders. It is the key to success. Collaboration with the governmental bodies with all the stakeholders is also a key to success. And in our process of working with the people who prepared the strategy and with the ministries, we could recognize that many of them are very well aware how important this collaboration is. However, there are still some individuals who don't understand the benefits of these processes, and that is something that should be fostered because it is truly crucial for the success. Now, we looked at the just transition through the 3 pillars of sustainability. And we can say that financial resources are available from various sources. Now, what is needed is the strategic transformation of local and national economies. On the other hand, we've seen through COVID crisis, through current crisis in Ukraine, that flexibility is required. And this is something that maybe has not been part of the equation prior to the last couple of years, but needs to be considered. Environmental point of view, the rehabilitation of degraded areas has been sufficiently addressed in planning. It has to be implemented. However, Slovenia still lacks strong political will in renewable energy resources. Let's hope that this will change in the very near future. Socially, this is what I've mentioned a couple of times already. I think here the challenge is the biggest because the coal regions with their long tradition have built identities on the mining, on the importance of the region. For example, importance of the Sasha region as a supplier of energy for the whole country also builds identity of the region. And this is endangered now, which means that the whole transformation process has to take into account that these people's identities are based on what they lived from and should give them an opportunity to build new realities. Sometimes we forget about this. That's why I put this picture of 2 proud miners who were willing to risk their lives for everybody, and they were proud to do that every day.
Would you come to the conclusions?
Yes, I am in the conclusion now. So just transition can be a pitfall in itself, but at the same time, a new opportunity for both regions. Just a reminder, just transition means greening the economy in a way that is fair and inclusive for everyone. We encourage trust, building of trust, collaboration, and social dialogue. Thank you very much.